Welcome into the Friday edition, September 15th of the Unblocked podcast. I'm Keith here with Brian and Coach. Not much going on this upcoming weekend, but we're going to make sure we cover all the topics as we do every Friday. We're going to do something kind of regular here every Friday, 3 storylines going into the weekend. I'm going to kick it off first with Coach Prime. Average game against Colorado State coming up, not much going on. And Colorado State decides to come off and take a shot at Coach Prime during a press conference. Granted, it was for the boosters and the alumni, talking about how his mama taught him to take off his hat and sunglasses when he talks to adults. But Coach Prime didn't take too kindly to that, and this game could what turned into maybe a friendly rivalry with Coach Prime calling off the dogs may get a little uglier than expected. But, Coach, what do you got going into it?
And to touch on what you said, last I saw, Coach Prime had bought all of his players sunglasses to wear out during warm-ups for the game tomorrow. So as he's fired back, mine is Lane Kiffin being sued, and we were taught in our education classes, Dr. Pebworth, who laughingly told me one time that my lesson plans were so bad that they didn't get better. He was going to be an unblocked blitzing linebacker who leveled me in my education class. And but we were taught, you never meet with somebody alone. You always have a witness, and then as life had gone on, you always assume you're being recorded. And you just got to be careful about what you say and who you say it to and how you say it, because we live in such a litigious society. And you can get sued for about anything nowadays. And that doesn't mean it'll hold up in court, but it could sure embarrass the heck out of you and your university. And now they're in the middle of that right now.
And Coach, just
Brian, how about you?
Just to expound on that point, Coach. I talked to some friends from Old Miss, and I think back to whenever I played, and for Coach John DePietro, and if I would have told him I needed a mental health break, I would have got hit with a ring. Obviously, kids are different now, and things are treated a lot differently.
Sure.
But there's always two sides to every story, and from what I understand, they tried to get the kid into the doctor. They tried to get the kid in through the trainer, and the kid literally would not show up. His mother then caused a stink, and then that recording happened, which is illegal in the state of Mississippi to record somebody without knowledge. So I'll always take a side that what you said was, yeah, the coach is embarrassed, and I agree absolutely with everything you said. But are we such a softer society today than what we were in 1994, Coach, or when you played or when you coached? And that's just my question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a victim society of victims now, and if you can find a way to make a dollar through being a victim, you're going to, and attorneys, not very good ones, are going to exploit you and your family for that to that end. And I'm not saying that Lane did anything wrong. I've read the same reports, and that they did everything. I mean, they were the every coach gets mental health certified school. I mean, they were the main one that started that revolution. And and you just all the things you said are exactly right. You just can't talk to them that way anymore, though, and especially if you've got somebody who's going to go public with that, because they are trying to sort of scorch the earth with the media to get attention and file a suit of that nature.
Keith, what are your thoughts on the Ole Miss situation?
I think today mental health is just such a big headline in all sports, in all work. It's definitely a different generation, different time. I definitely think it needs to be handled appropriately, but it's going to be interesting. What are the facts that come out? If he's not if they're offering it to him and he's not wanting to do it and using it as a way out, I don't know. But I definitely think mental health does need to be taken care of very seriously. I think every team, every university should have someone on staff for all teams. Coach, you got your Srixon hat on. Golf, mental game. Everything comes down to it. So it's definitely going to be interesting going forward. I do hope that the university, is being truthful and that they offered him help. But we'll see. And if it's,
I think honestly, with the legal issues that we're facing in college sports, we're going to have Danielle or Dan as a regular guest on our podcast. It seems like every week something else pops up.
I mean, the Dartmouth thing today also with, unionizing the football athlete cafeteria workers.
And that's something that Dan Luss predicted. He predicted on Twitter almost a year ago that at some point unions will come in. He thought it would come into California, not Dartmouth basketball, though. So
I thought a lot of it came through with before the NIL deals were passed. You saw a lot of schools, especially the research schools, the higher education schools. Northwestern was talking about unionizing. So, it was only a matter of time. But you look at these smaller schools and, they're not definitely having the NIL money to throw around. So maybe it's their way of making a stand. So.
And Keith, to your point, the golf issue, you mentioned that, Brett McCabe on Twitter. I follow him. My son is an aspiring professional golfer, follows him, read his book, the Mindside Manifesto, all about mental health, how to do things mentally, how to do things properly, how to not put so much pressure on yourself. All those, does an outstanding job and works with a lot of people in the golf community. And you're right. I mean, and that's because it is a different society. The kids have been raised differently. Kids have been handled differently, and they sometimes they really struggle with dealing with adversity in some cases because their parents never put them through any. And so it is a different world. There's no question.
Well, fantastic. That's good talk there. Moving on, we'll go into college football real quick. Brian, we're going to start with you. What's going on around the ACC this weekend?
Well, I'll tell you, the big game, Keith, obviously with your hat and everything that you brought on in your flag, Notre Dame, Central Michigan. I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but I will tell you, Notre Dame's schedule and everybody's schedule starts improving next week. I think Notre Dame will roll through the Chippewas, but next week, I think you've got
Ohio State. In South Bend.
The Buckeyes.
Yes, sir.
The Buckeyes kind of have a quarterback problem, so that should be a good game. This weekend's games, it's kind of iffy. I think they're out of the top 23 teams, 16 play, and they're 24-point or more favorites. But Miami took care of business last night. Virginia, Maryland's on now. I can't figure out the cable situation here at Cottage Hill Package Store to actually get the game on, but I'll figure that out afterwards. FSU is the team that nobody's talking about. And
you are. Well, you've already crowned them national champions.
I'm on the bandwagon, Coach. I watch all this Colorado stuff all day, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's great. And Tim Brando, our friend, who we're going to try and get on as well, he says their max is probably 6 or 7 wins. So we'll see. But, if you turned on ESPN today, any program, they were in Boulder, Colorado, which I think Deion has done a great job at hyping that all up. But then we've got a couple other interesting games. We've got Minnesota UNC up. Can UNC Gene Chizik stop that Minnesota powerful offense that played in the mud to a 13-10 game, Coach? And it wasn't in the mud, but it was 13-10. That was a real slobber knocker the first week. And then, of course, Pitt, West Virginia. Back in my heyday, when there were a lot different coaches at Pitt, West Virginia, that was the backyard brawl. And sometimes that can get nasty. And I know both of those teams are, kind of struggling a little bit right now, but should be a good game to watch. And that's wrapping up the ACC with the matchups that we have.
All right. Moving on, I'll jump into the Big Ten conversation real quick. We got a little Big Ten action tonight. Virginia and Maryland. Maryland, heavy favorite. Looking to go as 3-0, which would also put Virginia at 0-3. So that could be a kind of a coaching decision there. And you got, relevant to us, you got Tua Tagovailoa's brother at quarterback for Maryland. Now, moving on to the Big Ten. Not much else going on like everywhere. Penn State at Illinois. There should just be a lot of points scored. I see that Penn State can score, Illinois can score, but Illinois cannot stop anything. Minnesota and North Carolina, both undefeated. Like you mentioned, should be a fun game. UNC favored by a little bit there. the only other real big thing in going almost in the exact opposite direction of Coach Prime, bringing all this media and this publicity to his school in a positive light, you got number 8 Washington rolling into East Lansing, Michigan. And after we discussed on Wednesday with everything going on there, will that hold how dark of a cloud will that hold over that campus and that team? Currently Washington heavy favorites. But that's about it. Nebraska could turn into a disaster as they host Northern Illinois. The Huskies, you never know what they can do. They're 1-1 right now. Nebraska not even favored by 2 touchdowns. So, but Nebraska loses that could be 0-3, and that could be some serious coaching hot seats there. Coach, why don't you take us into the SEC? What you got for us?
Gladly. The interesting games, LSU and Mississippi State. I mean, I think LSU will win the game, but Mississippi State, we talked about last week, they're tough at home. It's a different kind of environment. They will play hard. I think the LSU will win the game, but that's a good one. I've got Kansas State over Missouri, Georgia over South Carolina, A&M over Monroe, Tennessee. I've got Tennessee going to the Swamp and beating Florida. That's another good football game. That's going to be an interesting one to watch. Auburn over Samford, Vandy over UNLV, Ole Miss, Georgia Tech. Probably be a little bit closer than what you'd expect just because of Ole Miss having to deal with Tulane last week. And working through that. Arkansas over BYU. I didn't touch on Alabama because I was going to toss that back to you, Keith, because of the quarterback change. And you probably know more about that quarterback than I do, and maybe let you expound upon Alabama and South Florida a little bit.
I think this will be, I saw that news come across the Twitter today, and I think, when Tyler Buchner signed there, it was definitely, I was shocked, but at the same time, he has a great relationship with Tommy Rees. He learned under him. And Tyler Buchner's the quarterback that always had the question, what if? He'd get in, he came in with the starting role and was injured, took his shoulder out and missed the entire season. And then last year when our quarterback decided he wanted to enter the transfer portal before the bowl game, Tyler Buchner wasn't even 100% healthy yet. And he ended up, because he had shoulder surgery, came in a week before the game. They went in and win that bowl game fairly comfortably against what is considered a fairly decent Iowa State team last year. So I think the South Florida game will be a great introduction for him. Again, being in an environment like Tuscaloosa versus Notre Dame, the standard is significantly higher, and those people are expecting a lot, especially after last week. I hope he goes in. It should be a low pressure game, but then again, you don't know till he gets on the field. But hopefully that'll be a good game for him to get in, maybe get a lead. Hopefully only play a half, and give their starting quarterback maybe a chance to get a couple reps in and get prepared for the following week as well. So
here's a caveat, though. He's in South Florida, though, and that's an away game.
Oh, that's right. We discussed this.
And the last time that they played an away game out of conference was 20 years ago, and the University of Hawaii beat them. So
okay,
well, I'm not predicting that.
Okay, so South Florida, that's Tampa, right? Okay, so yes. Here's all you need to know. The only game Tyler Buchner has won as a starting quarterback was the bowl game, and it was actually in Orlando. So Central Florida weather, he'll be fine there. Yeah, it's no pressure down there. He'll be good. Bama will win this by plenty, and I expect him to have not a great game, but a good game.
Coach, I'm just glad I wasn't at practice in Tuscaloosa this week.
You probably didn't want to be in the building with the coaches at midnight on Saturday night. Oh, and because I got a feeling they worked all night long. And and the interesting thing about the quarterback change was I wonder how much of it, when you watch the game and how many times that they put the camera on Tommy Rees in the press box and he looked so exasperated in talking with Jalen. You wonder if there's just that their lack of ability to communicate during the game for him that what he was seeing wasn't what he was, they were seeing upstairs and they obviously looked very frustrated. So back to what Keith talked about, these two guys speak the same language. that they will be able to communicate on the phones to one another and G and Hall a little bit, maybe a little bit better than Tommy did with Jalen. It'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, I think but Alabama, there was pressure coming in from every angle on that too. I think Tommy was just frustrated; they couldn't get anything going.
Sure.
And then you get in a tight pressure situation like that, just decision making becomes key. So anyway, it should be fun to watch. So Bama, I think, will still handle this game easily.
And every time Alabama loses, the opposing quarterback plays the game of his life.
Absolutely,
and it seems to be. And that has been very consistent in this certainly in the Saban era. They catch a hot quarterback and who just plays, who's never played at the level that guy that he's played at before, and that certainly happened last Saturday.
Johnny Football played his way into a number 1 draft pick without any studying, so by beating Saban one time.
Joe Burrow. I mean, heck, Hawaii almost went in there and beat them a few years back with Colt Brennan, playing one of the great games I've ever witnessed. I was at that game and watching Colt Brennan. You just couldn't hardly not root for the guy. I mean, he was such a competitor. I mean, they were driving down the field to try to beat Bama late, and in the middle of the drive, Colt Brennan lifts his face mask up, hurls right in the middle of the field, wipes it off, goes to the line, and starts calling signals. I mean, he
got beat up in that game too, pretty good.
Oh, he did. He was dehydrated, exhausted. I mean, it was amazing. He was an amazing competitor.
Fantastic. Well, again, should be a lot of storylines to play out. See how a lot of teams come back. A couple disappointing losses for teams over the weekend. Moving right on, NFL games. We'll just go through a couple quick things. You had the Eagles take care of the Vikings last night. Vikings with 4 fumbles lost, and that makes they've lost 6 of 6 on the year, which is just unreal. Kirk Cousins tried to pull it close, but
I tell you, I have a big problem with Thursday night games. It looks like nobody wants to play, and I honestly feel sorry for Kurt Herbstreit and Mike Tirico talking, and they have to broadcast that game. They kept running dives at each other. I talked to Coach in the second quarter, and I was like, these guys are all exhausted. And it was just an ugly game.
The Navy-Memphis game was a lot more fun to watch.
I wish I would have watched that one instead of the NFL game personally. So
these guys come off a Sunday night game or a Sunday day game even. And you don't have time to recuperate. I think those Thursday night games should start maybe a week or two later in the season so you can give teams a little bit bigger of a
bye week or something before it. I don't know how they need to do it, but you talk about player safety, and it's not safety. And I looked at the injury report going into last night. I think there were 11 total starters out for both teams.
Well, and
you're talking about a quarter of the players.
Yeah,
it's just
and
not
you look
fair.
At the other end too. Minnesota was starting players Thursday night that they rested on opening day. So. It's a lot of roster management, especially early in the season. And the fans are just hyped up for it, especially what Minnesota came off of last year in Philadelphia. But, moving on. Seattle goes into Detroit. Thursday we had a little good chat about the culture change and what a coach can do in that locker room. Detroit being at home for the first time this season, especially after that win against Kansas City in Kansas City. Speaking of culture change on this, I'm going to touch on C.J. Gardner said, no more wearing paper bags here. Everyone go get you a blue ski mask. And within 24 hours, Amazon sold out of blue ski masks. So I'm quite interested to see how this looks. Having 60,000 people all over the city of Detroit in blue ski masks. So
you better watch out for the dispensaries up there, Keith. The dispensaries, there's going to be blue ski mask in the dispensaries on every corner.
It's going to be a fun time. That's definitely a game I'm going to tune into. Just keep that on, TV number 2, just to watch what happens there.
I think Detroit's becoming America's team because of Dan Campbell. I mean, I really truly believe that. After he did Hard Knocks, I have friends that tell me every week, they're like Cowboys fans, Steelers fans. They're like, did you see what Dan Campbell did? And I think that's awesome for the NFL.
Absolutely.
And I play golf at Quail Creek in Fairhope, and I'm I mean, I'm so much younger than most of those guys. They call me Freddie. And but we have fun playing. I love playing with those guys and have fun with them. And but guy I played with today, he's from Michigan. He's a Michigan fan, and he is a Detroit Lion fan. And all he wanted to know from me was that I think the Lions would beat the Seahawks this week. And he was complaining about how Seattle maneuvered their way into the draft to get right ahead of Detroit to get a guy that they wanted, and how they and they were ill at him. The guy in Fairhope, Alabama, wants Detroit to kick Seattle's rear end. I can just tell you that.
And Coach, you're like me. You love the enthusiasm, and so does Keith. It's just like the enthusiasm is almost contagious, and you get a train going full motion like Dan Campbell has. Watch out, because that division is winnable. Now, I'm sorry to say that, Keith, because you're Bears.
Yeah, we're not winning the division this year. Don't worry. All right, you got Kansas City after a loss going into Jacksonville. Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence. Anybody got a feeling on that one?
I think that's going to be a great game, great quarterback battle. And obviously, Andy Reid doesn't usually lose 2 games in a row. And
No,
Jacksonville's got it rolling to some extent. We'll see, but that's going to be a good game from a quarterback's perspective just to watch as a fan of 2 great young quarterbacks.
No question.
All right. And then we'll end with Monday night doubleheader. New Orleans at Carolina. Cleveland coming in hot off of a big win at Cincinnati. Going into Pittsburgh, who had laid an egg about as bad as we've seen on week 1 there. So Carolina, Bryce Young at quarterback. Game number 2, they lost pretty good. What you guys thinking?
The Saints got screwed again on that touchdown. I don't know why the NFL, and I don't know which NFL referee keeps messing up the Saints games. But honestly, New Orleans fans should have a beef with the NFL referees, because I've watched that play probably 16 different times. And the guy caught the ball, and he was in the end zone. And I don't know if Dean Blandino reviewed the play or whoever the review guy was and said that he wasn't in, but I think a normal person can watch a catch in the NFL and literally say it's a catch. So that's my only thought. Saints get screwed again, but it's kind of par for the course.
I made a Twitter post on my personal account earlier today, but I head coached in roughly 300 games. And I could find 4. I know of 4 in which I felt like the officials actually caused the game to go a different direction. And out of 300, Brian has mentioned, I think, 4 in the 10 days we've started doing these podcasts. In just 2 weeks. So it's a little different. Brian tough on them officials now. He's hard on them football officials.
I mean, I think all we want is
Coach,
consistency
I watched the replay. I watched the replay like everybody else. You know, I watch it 13 times on a Monday morning, and I'm just like, what?
Shoot.
And I've only got one good eye, and literally, I'm just like, what are they seeing that I'm not? And I walk up to the TV screen and kind of get the close up. So,
oh gosh. Too funny.
I feel bad for Saints fans, but they did get the win. That's most
they got
important.
the win. Yeah, and I'm going to enjoy the quarterback battle there, Derek Carr and Bryce Young. That's another. I like Derek Carr. Just he's sort of what New Orleans needed. He is that guy. And along those lines, did you see what I'm talking about? Him having his ear holes covered in his helmet. Yeah. And the other quarterback came up to us and said, "What you got going on?" He said, "Blocks out the noise. I can hear about it." He's like, "I ain't never thought about that or heard of that." But just little Coach, things that you learn and pick up. That's pretty sharp.
Coach, after I watched that clip, I seen somebody on Monday Night Football. I think it was Kirk Cousins, and he's doing this, and I'm like, why doesn't he just put tape on his ear holes?
Do those, tape. I mean, exactly. It's just almost just too simple.
Yeah.
Well, that about wraps it up. A little bit of other NFL news that happened this week. The NFL made it official. They signed a new contract with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club based in North London to make their stadium, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the official home of the NFL in the UK through the 2029-2030 season. Now, I've been to this stadium. I've been there for European football. I've been there for NFL football. It is an absolute gem of a venue. It actually won its second Stadium of the Year award for soccer around the world. It was the very first one to have. You'll see a lot of retractable pitches going on right now where they can keep the natural grass for the soccer on top of what is basically a blank ground underneath where they can do football concerts and all that. It is an architectural gem. It's the same group that I believe did the Minnesota Vikings Stadium in Minneapolis. So
Keith, could you
they're
get
very
them to
good.
could you get them to call Roger Goodall and just talk about turf? And
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Premier League is going to take a harder stance about using their turf than the NFL is going to be able to convince them to do otherwise. But
I think it's
uh,
great to go globally, and I'm becoming a fan of soccer through my daughter. So
yeah,
I think
and you'll see a lot more stadiums doing this, but it's a gem of a stadium. It's a hell of an experience being in London, and it's amazing the culture over there, how much they've embraced it. What started out maybe as kind of a more of a joke, the culture over there has just completely embraced it. Everyone I know over there who follows soccer has an NFL team, and
Right.
they
you
contact
see the
me.
jerseys. You see the
Yeah, and
jerseys. I mean, it's just like an NFL stadium experience. It's the
you
same
go to a
thing
game
on
there
TV.
and
Yeah,
you see all the locals are just wearing whatever jersey their favorite team is. They're just
yeah,
excited to be there.
yeah, yeah,
Let alone when
absolutely.
Well,
your team actually comes
right.
through. They have embraced that, and it's quite an experience. And I encourage anybody who gets an opportunity to do it to go. There's plenty of travel packages available if you just want to
Well,
make sure everything's covered.
if you're buying,
No,
Keith,
well,
coach and I will go over to the Ravens game this year in London. So as long as
actually,
you're buying.
so actually, since that is the soccer club I follow in England, and I am a paid member of the club, they offered me an opportunity. So I have 8 season tickets to every NFL game that's
Awesome.
played in that stadium.
That
So
is awesome. So I
me
just
and a
need to pay
buddy
for the
just went in and
flight.
got them. We get them at face value, which is pretty, nice. They're upper deck seats, but we know the stadium, we know the good views, so we might pay 90 to 100 a ticket, but it's a great resource because we've just got friends all over who, if their team's going there, we're always happy to say, if we can't, odds are I'm not going to be able to go, but this way I can, always get my money back and make sure someone else gets to have that experience. And then at the same time, if that doesn't work, I'll just sell them and make a couple bucks off of it. So,
Well,
but definitely, if
and
your team's ever playing there, highly recommend. And you're going to start seeing games throughout Europe. They're already doing Germany. There's a game coming up, I believe, in Frankfurt. And
Yep.
watch out for Spain. It will be in Madrid with Madrid's new stadium. They are doing the same concept that is going on in England. So their goal is to be the next host of an NFL game over there as well. And they'll probably also host an NBA game.
I'm a
Want
big
to watch.
fan of the going on the global stage because I mean it's obviously there. If the interest is there, as long as you can put people in the seats and we aren't using the artificial intelligence to actually have fans in the stands, I'm game.
So
well,
on
and with
that,
that,
apparently they were filming a movie. That's what that was about.
you're right. That's exactly what was going on. And with that, the local Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Alabama partners with a group of semi-pro teams from Germany, and they've flown here and spent 2 weeks here over last summer and in the summer before. A group of coaches have gone to Germany to go over there and work with them and coach them and help them with their community club semi-pro football teams. And I actually got to clinic them when they were here the last time. It was really cool to spend time with those guys. But they are all NFL guys. They know absolutely nothing about any college football whatsoever. They all have their jerseys of their favorite teams. We go out to eat at Rotolo's here in Fairhope, take them out and visit, and every one of them's got an NFL jersey on supporting somebody. And you start talking, Auburn and Alabama, and they only know what they've learned in the 2 weeks they've been here. That's about it. So it's really interesting.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely going really picking up globally, and it's kind of fun to watch. But again, if you ever have the means, definitely go. Can't encourage that enough. But that's about it, guys. We told you to be a short one. We're hitting about 30 minutes here, which is about perfect for us. Next week will be a little longer, but next week we'll be back on Monday to kind of review what happened in the college football world. And also, we do have some guests I'm hoping for next Wednesday. Coach Brian, you want to run us through who's going to be with us?
Coach, go ahead.
Chris Bell, lead pastor for Three Circle Church in Fairhope, will be with us next Wednesday. It's a church of over 4,000 members. That's where our family goes, where my daughter sings, and son-in-law runs the facilities there. Chris is a big-time sports nut, Alabama fan. I got 2 kids playing football at Fairhope High, a daughter playing volleyball. I mean, they're eyeball deep in sports, and it'll be interesting to see how they have been able to tie their faith in sports together as a family, and with him being a lead pastor, and how all that connects. So looking forward to hear from him.
I'm looking forward to his message, and also working on some other guests. Not ready to announce anything yet, but as we say from here, we're about sports, family, and faith, and that'll be something for everybody to tune into.
Oh, it's fantastic. Can't wait for that. So, well, from all of us here at the Unblocked Podcast Network, we wish you all a happy weekend. Be safe. Roll Tide, War Eagle, whoever, go Irish, whoever you're cheering for. And
just enjoy the games. And go Jags. Go Jags. Big win at Oklahoma State.
Yep, Okie Light. Let's go.
Go UNA.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us.